Hello friends, it's Tanya Boser here for a video with Trinity stamps, and this time we're going to embroider on felt using a stamp. I'm using Blessing Bear here and the Stick and Stitch transfer paper from Sulky. It is something that you can stamp or draw or print on and then stick to your fabric to create a great template or guide for your stitching. I'm going to ink up this Blessing Bear with some Hero Arts Intense Black ink. You can use whatever black water-soluble ink you have, and stamping that on the Sulky Stick and Stitch. And then I'm going to choose some felt. This is some wool blend felt from Benzie Design. They have a lovely palette, which I'll show you in just a little bit. I'm just going to peel and stick the Sulky onto the felt, and then I'm going to trim it out in preparation to start stitching. I am going to, and it does, this wool blend felt stitches beautifully. I actually quite love it. I went a little cuckoo when I bought some. We're also going to use the Coffee Cozy Hand Stitched die set, and we're going to use the 3 main pieces and the stitching. There's a die that adds stitching on the end so that you can join it together. And you would normally, I believe, put this on after you're done with the first one, the first die cut, so that you could get it tucked a little closer to the end. But this works out. You'll see. It looks okay. This is the palette, the Trinity Stamps palette from Benzie Designs. They are a company that sells felt. And they also sell coordinating DMC embroidery threads with their palettes. And I took mine and I put them on some spools so that they were all nice and neat and able to be used easily. So we're going to start out with the thread that is coordinating with the brown felt. And I have 4 strands of the embroidery thread here on my needle. And I'm going to do a running stitch on this. I think it's called a running stitch, or is this the back stitch? Either way, it looks lovely inside and out. And I'll just do a few stitches here for you to see how that works. If you want to speed through the embroidery, you can, or you can speed this whole video up. However, I'm just going to do 2 to 4 stitches of each style to show you how I do this. And that is the belly of the bear. So I'm going to switch to a green embroidery thread here to do both of the stems. And again, we're just doing that straight running stitch on this to create the stems for the branch of berries, which is what they're going to look like on this, a branch of berries and a branch of leaves with a flower at the top for the other one. And I did do the straight stitching on all of those. Now I'm not sure what this stitch is called. I in my head as I remember it, it's called a daisy stitch, but I could be really wrong. So you come up in this one end and of this leaf or petal that you're going to create, and you go right back down the same hole, and then you catch the loop so it doesn't pull through on your thumb, and you come up at the other tip of the leaf or petal and catch the loop with your needle. So you're going to tack that down on the other end, and then you go back down the other side. So you're going to see me do this a second time. See how that tacks that other end? It creates this oval shape. So you're going to go up at the base of the leaf, and then you're going to catch the loop on your thumb as you go back down through the same hole, which this time was a little trickier for me. And then you go up where the tip of the leaf is going to be. Stick the needle through the loop, pull that through, tighten it up, and then on the other side of the thread, you go back down the same hole. And you just continue that all the way up that branch of leaves. And at the top, I did 3 of those same loops to create the blue flower. So now we're going to do a French knot. You come up and wrap it around the needle twice, and you have your needle pointed away from the spot that you just came up. So you're going backwards up the thread. And then you stick it down into the fabric. You tighten the knot down around the tip of the needle, and you push it all the way through. And to prevent that knot from loosening up, you do a really shallow stitch on the other side. We'll do this again. We'll come up kind of in the center of that berry area. And then you're going to point your needle back towards the other direction, wrap it around twice. I did it 3 times here. Don't do that. It makes it super tight. Snug that knot down around the tip of your needle. Push the needle all the way through. You're kind of keeping your thumb on that knot so it doesn't get disrupted. It's not super delicate. As long as you remember to point your needle away from the fabric when you're wrapping it around the thread, you will have this knot work. If you try to do it without paying attention to which direction you're winding that needle, you're going to have some troubles. So there's the berries and the flower and the leaves. And for the ear, I'm using a pink thread, and we're doing a satin stitch. So that's basically doing a varying length stitch really close together so it creates a solid area. Now, I do keep catching the tails of my knot, and they keep pulling through, so I have to keep pulling them back to the back of the bear. And we'll just do, I think it took me maybe 5 or 6 stitches per ear to get that all filled in. And this whole bear took me probably maybe an hour to stitch. That's including stitching it to the coffee cozy. So I'm going to use the coordinating die, and it cuts through this like butter. And I do cut 2 for the front and the back because we're going to sandwich the bear over the coffee cozy. Look at that. Then that'll hide any of the stitching, and it'll just look super good. So this is where that wonderful dissolvable sulky stuff comes in handy. So you just stick it in some water, cold water, and this is after less than a minute. It pretty much all dissolves. So I'm going to take this to the kitchen sink and use my sprayer to get the rest of it off. And then I just need to let it set to dry. You don't want to use any heat setting to make it dry faster because the wool will shrink. And I had pre-shrunk all of this felt so that it wouldn't shrink in different ways. That's a sewer. All of us people who sew a lot, you always wash your fabric first because you want it to all shrink the same way, or be all shrunk so that when it doesn't get washed in the future, it shrinks in the same way. So I'm going to use some craft tacky glue to hold this in place while I am stitching the scalloped edges to the top and bottom of the coffee cozy. And it doesn't take much, just a little bit. It looks like I'm squeezing that bottle really hard. I'm not. I'm just squeezing it enough to get a little tiny bit out. And I'm going to use that to tack these pieces on so they don't slip, and I don't need any pins. It's super easy. I really love this technique. I'm going to use a coordinating darker gray thread for this. This light gray, and that is 4 threads again also. This light gray felt is not from that Benzie palette. It is from another company, but I think it is exactly the same felt. They probably buy them from the same manufacturer. And I think I got the gray one off of Amazon, probably. Anyway, we're going to do this running stitch again through the across both the top and the bottom, and that goes pretty quickly. I won't make you watch the whole thing. Just going up one hole and down the first hole. That creates a lovely stitch. So I've got the bear all stitched. I've got the coffee cozy edges put together. We're going to use some more of the tacky glue to tack that to the excuse me, the coffee cozy. And I'm kind of liberal with it. I make sure I put it all over because I don't want it to shift at all. This is going to take a little time to do the whole bear, and there's a whole lot of flipping it back and forth involved. And I really don't want it to slip and be crooked because I don't like having to tear stitches out. That's no fun. I made sure I found the center of the coffee cozy before I started. And I'm just tacking that down. Now I'm going to press that firmly so it has a good contact with all of the areas that it needs to stick to. And I'm making sure the edges at the top and the bottom, over the ears and the feet, all match up, giving those a good squeeze. And I'm going to use 2 threads of the embroidery thread here. And I've already tied a knot in the end. And I'm going to start over here. I'm going to make sure that the knot is tucked inside so it doesn't show at all. I'm going to make sure those ends are tucked in. So I'm going to go down to start my first stitch. And now each time I make a stitch from the back, I'm going to make sure I take a peek at where I'm poking the needle in. And I'm going to go a little ahead of that last stitch and make sure that it comes through in the spot that I want it to on the front. And again, we're going to do a running stitch. I wasn't sure. I thought I might do a whip stitch on this, but I think I like the border that it creates here on this one. So just going to continue to stitch around. I am flipping it over on the back, making sure that I am a fairly even distance away from that previous stitch, coming up and then going back to the last hole and down. And that creates a lovely solid stitching front and back. If someone's looking at the back, it still looks lovely. Now we need to join the 2 ends to make this a circular tube to fit on a coffee cup. Again, going to tack it down with the craft tacky glue, making sure that I'm lining this up good. I did practice this wrap around a coffee cup to make sure that I had the right width, and I had already attached my knot. I'd come up from the underside of one of those flaps, and then I went through the bottom. And now I'm going to go back. So this already has those pre-die cut holes. And we're going to just make sure that we continue this running stitch that's all the way across the top and at the end all the way across the bottom. So I go across to the left into the other side of that seam, and I come back to the right, and then I go back to the left again, and then I'm going to come up from the bottom in the row of stitching that is going to go down across the coffee cozy. And then I'm just going to do the regular running stitch. And then when I get to the bottom, I'm going to do the same thing so it looks like a continuous row of stitching on the bottom also. And that'll give it a little extra stability. We are almost done. Now, this is the finished product. Look at that. The stitching is all the way across on the top and bottom. It looks lovely on the inside. And we're just going to slide it on a coffee cup here. I had to go find this one. I knew I had it in my cupboard somewhere. And there is the completed stitched bear. Aren't you excited about this thought? Now, that's all I've got for this video, and I would love for you to make sure you're subscribed to Trinity Stamps. Check out these other videos. I'm sure there's some awesome things you haven't seen yet. Until next time, bye-bye.